How's everyone doing? How's the day been? It's been a long day, and this is our final fireside chat on listening. And so it's really my honor to introduce, first of all, Robert Clark. We just met recently over the last few weeks. He is a nationally respected civic leader who spent more than 25 years in the youth workforce development space, not only as a founder and advocate, but also as a product of these impactful programs, as perhaps we'll hear about today. And as a Youth Build Boston graduate, Robert was the first Youth Build graduate to launch a Youth Build program in a major city in New York. And that's really what eventually brought us together. And he has spent his career advocating for juvenile justice reform, reentry programming, and vocational training for youths. Sorry, who was that? It's a voice from the ether. And is a Boston native, which I did a little Googling to discover. So that was, and I will just say on a personal note that although we just met recently, there's a kind of buzz that began with the Cortico team about something happening in Newark. And it was, of course, not just Robert, but also this incredible group, some of whom joined us today. And we'll hear more about that today. But just really exciting to have you here. And Kathy Cramer, who is the Natalie C. Holtman Chair of Letters and Science and the Virginia Shapiro Professor of Political Science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Kathy's work focuses on the way people in the United States make sense of politics and their place in it. She's known for her innovative approach to the study of public opinion, or I might add a little editorial comment to what I saw in your bio, what we might call public thought, the expanded category beyond opinions, but also experiences and perspectives that really constitute a more holistic understanding of what's happening in people's lives. And she uses methods such as inviting herself into conversations of groups of people to listen to the way they understand public affairs. And we're going to hear about some of the work she's been doing in her role as a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences Commission on reimagining our economy. And last, if you're not familiar with it, Kathy's book, award-winning book, The Politics of Resentment, Rural Consciousness in Wisconsin and the Rise of Scott Walker, really, which became this go-to source for understanding some of what happened in the 2016 presidential election, was also what brought us together. And I'll just say that Kathy is just one of the most important people in all the work that you have learned about from C3 and Cortico. And it really was when we met in 2017. And if I were to rewrite that part of the bio, kind of going and listening to coffee clatches in the wild, which is what Kathy was doing for several years, and then sense-making, and then bridging by writing about what she was hearing and making it understandable to people in other parts of the country. And so with that, I welcome you both. And my opening question really to both of you is, can you just talk about the role of listening in your work? And how did you come to focus on listening? And maybe we'll start with Robert.
Thank you, Deb. As a youth development practitioner, I've had the privilege of listening to young people's stories for over 25 years. Their stories, their family stories, how they come to us, what some of their drivers are, and they're very, very rich narratives. And so this project sort of allowed us to be able to, I was, first of all, really excited because to have a tool that could allow you to capture these voices and share what I've been hearing and experiencing for all these years, not just to be heard, but to be actionable, I think was what really, really got us excited about the product. And listening for us is really it's really about trying to understand how to meet people where they are, so we can help them build the belief that they can transcend circumstance. And I'll stop there, Kathy.
So I have to laugh at my picture first and think, oh my goodness, look what the pandemic did to me. So I'm a political scientist, a social scientist, and I really listening is sort of a part of who I am, and not necessarily for great reasons. Like I had a dad who talked very much, right? I practiced listening growing up, and I think honestly, being a woman in the world, it's been easier and expected of me to often be a listener. But thankfully, those skills have come into great use as I entered grad school, which was a little bit of a whole foreign affair to me. And I knew that I was really interested in why people think and act the way they do about politics. But as I went into my graduate studies, I realized that most of the way we understand that is through public opinion surveys, which are very useful. But the things that really fascinated me were what interviewees said before the questionnaire, in between the questions, after the question. And so along the way, I realized that if I really want to know how people understand the world and then how that matters for the way they make sense of politics, it helped me to listen to them talk. And ideally, not to me, but to other people in their lives whom they spend time with. So throughout the course of my career, I've been doing listening, which Deb and the folks at C3 and Cortico have really made me come to understand is a useful tool beyond political science, right? So I use listening as a tool as a social scientist, and I'll stop there.
So maybe, Kathy, you can take us to from Coffee Clashes in the Wild to Fora today, and we've spent the day exploring some of the ideas and the concepts, zooming out, but also seeing some of the technology, but the core of what now is the Cortico platform called Fora. I think in various ways we can trace origins to, conversations we had, and but even tracing back further, or just can give us a little sense of, and it really, I think you just touched on it, this idea of not just interviewing, let alone coming in thinking how to frame things, but meeting people where they're at, and that mode of listening. Can you relate it to what Fora is today? And then I'm going to turn to Robert just to hear a little bit about sort of how that introduction of technology, and now with more and more AI in the mix, sort of how it's actually affecting the work that's happening at OIN. So.
Sure, but first of all, Deb gives me way more credit than I deserve, but I'll tell you the story as I see it of my connection to Fora. So I wrote this book called The Politics of Resentment, which was about Wisconsin and was not about Donald Trump. And I should have seen Donald Trump coming like so much of the rest of the world, but I definitely did not. But when the 2016 presidential election happened, the book was about primarily the rural versus urban divide in Wisconsin, and specifically how people in rural communities in the state perceived that they were not getting their fair share, and what it sounded like, and how they felt that, and how they perceived it. And so when Donald Trump won, and if you'll remember, Wisconsin was the last state to be called, I'll just let that drift off, ... Lots of people turned to me and said, what is up with those people in Wisconsin? And at one of these occasions, I was asked to explain what I had heard in Wisconsin. I spoke briefly on a panel, and then the conversation moved on to sort of, not let's try and understand the perspectives of these folks, but what is wrong with them? And so I didn't say much after I kind of gave my opening spiel. And then Deb, whom I did not know at the time, came down from the audience and basically said, who are you? He's probably done this to many of you, right? What's your story, right? Who are you and what's your story? And I did not know, what can I say, of the genius I was speaking to. But I knew pretty quickly that we had this shared concern over the nature of communication in the US and around the world, and the lack of listening that was taking place in our society. And Deb then followed up and introduced me to many of you, and we pretty quickly realized that that it's not practical to send a bunch of me around the country in Volkswagen Jettas, inviting oneself into conversations in gas stations, although that would be kind of cool. But my technology had been, yes, my car, I had graduated to digital recorders, if I recall, but sense making with highlighters and post-it notes. But then here was this group of people with all these skills in terms of actually turning problems of human communication into engineering questions, right? And so Deb said, how can we scale up the listening that you did? And I was like, count me in. I'm in for the adventure. But this may be a little bit more commentary than you're after, but I was not enamored of technology when I met you. And there were various points along the way where I was skeptical. And Deb, one response in particular was, you sent me this essay that was about, yes, technology can be used for good, but it can never replace human beings because it can never, computers can't love. And I was like, sign me up. I am so ready to, be on this journey with you all. So we dreamed up the Local Voices Network, as it was called at the time, and we piloted it in Madison, Wisconsin. And what it was initially was a group of facilitators that we recruited from this facilitation network in town, who then recruited, facilitated, and did some sense making. And from there, Fora has grown, right? It's expanded with so many different, over 150 community partners. And every bit of that, the recruiting, the facilitation, the sense making, the curation, it's all just become, it's just blossomed. So that's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but it started from dreaming. Dreaming, how do we create a way for people to hear each other, to listen to one another, to be heard, to have voices that aren't normally heard in the mix in the US and around the world, and not just in politics, but in just the way we live with one another.
So, Robert, you had your own, thank you, Kathy, for sharing that story and the backstory, really. I mentioned in introducing you 25 years of this work, you have your own long history and the thread and the importance of listening, and it's recent that maybe the two threads you just heard that came together a few years ago has started to intersect with yours, and so so I was wanting you to hear a little bit of the backstory of this tool and some of the methods and the people connected to it. And as I said, it's been remarkable the kind of energy I've been seeing from our team as they've been spending time with yours. So just curious to hear from your perspective how this kind of technology and the methodology and the people and the kind of intent behind it, where it came from, how's it evolving? How's it changing as it comes into a very different world with its own history of your work and your team and these incredible fellows that we've heard from today? So just love to.
Yeah. So we had an opportunity about a year ago to meet with Deb and team. There was a philanthropic partner who I've had a long-standing relationship with, who had a project at a school that kind of wasn't going the way that they wanted it to. They had ran into some barriers, and so they called me, and it's a friend of mine, so she's like, "Hey, Rob, we want to see if you're interested in the project." And so I'm listening, and I was immediately giddy about the idea of, we work with young people, we're part of Aspen, you always hear about youth voice and, youth agency and making sure that young people are part of this decision making and interdependence between administration and young people. So all of those ideas collided when I heard about Fora. And it's like, oh, wow. how much can we do as it relates to youth voice, youth agency, but also stakeholder understanding of young people's experience. One of the things that I've always found fascinating is in the years of work with young people, I've learned that many young people disconnect from school for very noble reasons. And you can, read the Belfance brothers talking about dropout factories, and dropout itself assumes that a young person, right, like it has all kinds of negative, connotations. And the idea that young people are of age where they feel like they have a responsibility to contribute to the income in a household, where they have the responsibility of deciding that they're going to care for their siblings over themselves, right? Like those kinds of choices, I'm not necessarily sure that administrators and system thinkers actually understand. And so the Fora tool for us immediately I was overstimulated with how much we could possibly do with this work. That led us to a wonderful young woman that's on our team, Emily Stewart, who's our sort of policy manager. We were working on some state legislation at the time that, quite honestly, the Youth Voices Project and Fora actually helped us get to the finish line, because it was young people's excitement about actually being heard by a state legislator, right, that allowed them to, it brought them together. And earlier today when they were sharing their workshop, which was odd, I stood in a room watching young people and staff that I'm responsible for. I didn't have to say a word, right? It was so clear how powerful the tool is for them in their own agency, and them being able to facilitate a conversation, with a group of people that they may never have met if not for this opportunity. So for us, I think my work in working with Opportunity Youth and young people who have all kind of experiences, and your work in Wisconsin with trying to understand the narratives of those families, of those people. It's just two different groups of people, right? But the common thread is it's people. All people want to be heard. They want to be understood. And for people who are in positions of influence, it's important to listen. And so I'm excited about the product. I'm excited about continuing to connect with Deb and his team. And I have tremendous hope for what this can do for the quality of life in the city of Newark and the state of New Jersey.
Thank you, Robert. You brought a highlight along, and maybe you could tell us just a little bit about the specific kind of questions or experiences that the work that you started was focused on, and then we can listen to the highlight.
So the origins of the project that we were fortunate enough to be a part of, it started as a favor to a friend, and it was like, whoa, this is a gift, was trying to understand youth disconnection in Newark, New Jersey. It was specific to a specific high school, but we immediately, because we manage a multi-tiered intermediary with all kinds of different programs touching many young people and organizations, we were like, oh, wow, this is great, right? So we can survey everybody amongst all the programs that we work with and contribute to this project. So the project started off on youth disconnection. We have a quote from a young man named Malachi, who was in one of the sessions. Can we cue up the quote now?
Well, me being the second oldest of my family is more of the responsibility on me. So I got a little brother, he 13, and I got a sister that's C16. So we were taking care of both of them and trying to get them up for school and trying to help them with their homework and stuff like that. It dragged into my time where I had to do stuff, and most of the time I couldn't even go outside, I couldn't hang with friends, or I couldn't do clubs, or I couldn't do nothing I really wanted to do because most of my time was taken up just by home by itself. And then also with like the whole medical history, that just took up most of the whole school year because it's like in and out, in and out, in and out, back and forth. It was like, when do I even have time for school? When do I have time for myself? And it's like balancing it is rocky unless you really know how to fix home and school and have them both like come together when it's not even that easy. Yeah, that was really the main and like that really like impacted my whole school experiences is just like taking care of doing what I have to do that seemed to me greater than school. Then I felt back in school because I'm like, if I already got to deal with that, that's already enough right there. I can't handle too much more than that.
So when I heard this from Malachi, there were two things that stuck out at me, to me. One was he mentions the medical history, but what he didn't say is that he had a heart attack. Just think about the stress load on this young man. And also in the quote, he never mentioned his parents. Right? He talked about what he's responsible for and the choice that he had to make. Now, listening to Malachi doesn't give us a solution for Malachi's challenge, but listening to Malachi helps us understand we may need to ask more questions, right, before we start designing sort of solutions to problems we don't understand. Whether you're managing a school, city government, or whatever it is, listening to young people or listening to people is just extremely important. And I've been grateful because, you know, you do this work so long, you think you know something, and then you realize you may not know as much as you think you know. And so for me, this initiative has really helped me actually become a better listener, because you're busy. You're doing the things you're doing, and you, as a leader, you got to make a decision and you got to go. But do you have enough information? Have you talked to enough people? And are you really listening?
Thank you, Robert. When you we spoke, you told me about, you mentioned that, you know, people jump to conclusions about what they think they know, and you're talking about some of the youth and that you were involved in your program, and then you sent me that clip, and yeah, it was like for me, a gut punch just to hear it, and yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Kathy, I'd love to hear a little bit about, you've done a lot of work, as we heard, shaping the work, but now you're actually bringing Fora and the methods into new projects, including the commission, the American Academy. Could you tell us a little bit about the commission and how listening has impacted the work of that commission and impacted the commissioners?
Sure, and it's so related to your comments, Robert, in that if you're trying to solve a problem, it's helpful to understand what the people facing the problem are going through, right? It seems so straightforward, and yet so often in the policy process, there's listening takes place, but it's haphazard, or it's town hall meetings, and so the commission that I was asked to co-chair, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, had a commission on the democracy, our common purpose, it came to be called. And that commission had decided that a huge part of our problems as a democracy are economic problems, namely that we often talk about the well-being of the economy, but we don't really talk about the well-being of the American people. So I put together this commission to try to understand what are the issues facing well-being of the American people, economic well-being, but understanding economic well-being in very broad terms, and what ought to be done about that. So we were tasked with coming up with recommendations, policy, practice within different industry type recommendations that we are now in a year of proselytizing or promoting to different levels of government and different actors. But as a commission co-chair, it was very important to me that we do build listening into this work, because those of us on the commission, were very concerned about these problems. We came together concerned about these problems, and we represented a wide range of people, but none of us had faced economic challenges any time in the recent past. And so we did listening sessions across the country, oftentimes facilitated by the commissioners, sometimes by staff members at the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and sometimes by community members. But we just wanted to ask people, what are your challenges? What are your hopes? What do you wish that people making decisions knew about your lives? And what values do you think underlie the economy? So we used that as well as a massive data gathering effort to try to understand what then do we propose to try to make it more possible for more people in the U.S. to thrive. So I can play some examples. Some of you, many of you I'm sure are familiar with this common question that's in kind of political discourse these days of the economy is doing great. Why don't people see that, right? Well, the excerpts I want to play for you briefly, admittedly, were recorded a few years ago. So arguably the economy has gotten much better since then. But what you'll hear in the first one, if you could please cue up my second highlight, is a woman saying, look, I'm at the top of my economic potential, and still I don't have stability, security. So this is a brief one. This is a woman in Tennessee.
The feeling of not living on the edge of disaster, because I feel like, even in my current, I just said I was at my fullest potential 5 minutes ago, and I'm still like, one doctor's visit away from not being there. And pretty much most people I know are. I think that, shelter, food, access, and security, these are like the most important things to an economic well-being. That's what all of the economy should be paying for. So, and the stability of knowing that those things are there, I think it comes with all of those.
So she was saying something that we heard a lot of, that sure, I might be employed, but I don't know what's I don't have security. I don't know what's going to be the case in a month from now, a year from now. And it was really important for us to hear, because we had all kinds of, like I said, data, hard data on the nature of the economy, even down to a pretty, local level. But that doesn't tell you what people are feeling about the economy, and that perception of, I'm on the edge of disaster. I have a job, but I still feel like I'm on the edge of disaster. Should I play the other one? Yes.
Would you like to?
Yes. So would you please cue up my first one too? This one I like to play for you because it's not always the case in fora conversations, but sometimes we have this experience of people know, or at least hope, that a decision maker, someone in power, is going to be listening. And this woman is an airport worker in Washington, D.C., and when she was in the midst of this conversation, she had a sense that at some point, maybe you all would be listening. So I don't remember how long this one is, but I don't think it's too long. Thank you. Go ahead.
Like I told you, 25 for me, very big amount for me. Now the economy is very tough. I can't handle it because I go to Costco, I buy $1, not enough for my kids. I go $1, not enough. Reaching very high, because a lot of people, my airport, everywhere, like me, hard-working people, need something for inside America. America, you have everything. Please help like me, poor like me, a lot of people, my airport, everywhere. Please help me.
Robert, you've suggested you have ideas for scaling your work, your effort, and I was just curious how you think about scale.
That was really dope. Like,
I know, yeah.
ooh.
I felt the same about you, yours.
So as I said, the pilot that we've done has been really exciting. We've learned a lot. It's getting a lot of traction in the city. Different folks are interested in the product and listening, and so we're excited about scaling. We've started the fundraise. We've created sense-making fellows job descriptions for young people, and this year we had about 170 conversations, 33 conversations with 170 young people. Next year I want to try to get to at least 1,000 conversations across all of our organizations and onboard community partners. I also sit on several boards in the community that are responsible for public education, workforce development, and so even here today, it's like being in a candy store, because I've seen all kinds of different tools that I think could really, really help advance important work that's happening in Newark. And I think the more that people can listen, we may just have the opportunity to influence some of what happens in spaces that we may not control, but we can influence. And so, our vision is to really, so we run programs for young people who are disconnected, have dropped out, or looking for a second chance, or what have you. And so at the moment of application, throughout their entire experience, we want this fora to be at the center of that. And so that if you think about it like the young people as our customers, if we can constantly listen to our customers, right? Even year over year, every couple years, the young people's experiences change. You see a young person, they walk a certain way, they talk a certain way, and you think you have the solution because you worked with somebody 2 years ago that may have been just like them. They weren't just like them, right? And so how do we use the product to be smarter in our program design, smarter in our training for teachers and administrators, and smarter in our sort of policy-making efforts, our relationships with legislators, and help our community in Newark, but the broader community in New Jersey, understand that young people are the greatest resource available to the survival of our community.
Thank you. This morning, Andrew said, the moderator who says they're going to make time for questions from the audience, that he's not that guy. Looks like I'm that guy, because Matt kept flagging me with time, and I was looking at that 15 minutes, but now I realized that we're almost at time. But there are mics at the table, so maybe we can just open up for a couple of questions, and then we have a reception. We have 7 minutes left. Okay. So why don't we see if there's any questions or responses from, yes, there's a hand.
Do I just talk? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello? I can just speak up.
Yes, we can hear you.
I think that like one of the things we hear from our partners all the time is having to sell the project that they're working on, even though they know that it is not representative of, number-wise, it is not representative. It should not speak for all members of the community, right? Every singular highlight should not speak for everyone. And I just wanted to know how you feel about the criticisms that could easily be lobbed in all of our ways and all of our projects, because we're not out here trying to get everyone's voice. We are trying to get people's voices, and what does that mean when you're not trying to do everything and be everything for everyone in that kind of scenario? I'd just love to hear how you respond to that criticism.
It's a good question. I don't think that in our work we're trying to say we've listened to everybody. I think that if you can get a large enough sample size, right, and you can be clear about the themes that you're hearing, you can't deny the people's voices. You can't deny that there are residents who have these concerns. Is it every resident? No. But it may be something, maybe their thoughts or what their drivers or whatever is important to them may maybe you want to consider that before you make a decision.
Can I just add briefly, very much in agreement, and if you lead with, this was never meant to be representative of everybody in this neighborhood, this community, whatever, and just lead with that. And still, if you can do enough listening to recognize patterns, and then just play a few highlights for people, right? And then say, have you learned something? Like, and not to be that dismissive about it, but it doesn't take much. If people pause and listen, they recognize it's a different kind of knowledge. It may not be a quick encapsulation of what everybody's thinking, but it adds so much depth to any kind of surface level accounting, like generalizable accounting you can do.
I would also add that it's important, at least for me, I've had to slow myself down at times because this could easily be used as a check the box on community engagement. And it could also easily be part of a transaction, right? I want to understand what these people want so I could sell them something. Right? And so for me, it's some of what's important is just listening. It's not always about what are you going to do. Because, at least for me, if you're thinking about what you're going to do, you may not be really listening, right? And so, it takes time to understand the issue. You can't hear it once or twice and think you got it, right? Because it's nuanced. People are complicated. The challenges we're trying to solve are complicated. So, for me, it's like pace.
Question. Why should people listen? When you come up with this, you want people to listen. How do you get them to understand it's important for them to listen? And why are you listening? Why are you asking these questions? What's your process as you enter into identification and focus for the questions you ask or the prompts that you offer for listening?
Oh, that's a lot. There are a lot of questions there.
Sorry, not sorry.
No, yeah. It feels good. Honestly, I mean, the reason that I've kept doing this kind of work in my research and then have become involved with C3 and Cortico is it feels right in my gut and in my heart in terms of this is how humans, no, this is what humans need at this point in time. And it also, I mean, when you have those moments of pausing and reflecting and what do you say, holding space for another group of people, and you witness them recognizing they're being heard, it's an amazingly powerful feeling. And it's such an antidote to all the junk, all the stuff that we're doing poorly as humans, right? So it feels good.
Yeah, that was a really good response, Kathy. I was trying to really listen to your question before I responded with, it's a human experience. All of us want to be heard. Right? And if we could just, whether it's, think if you can remember your fondest memories of talking to your parents, did you feel listened to? Right? How many siblings were in the house? Did you ever get the last word? Did you feel heard? Did you feel like I think it's at the core of all of us. And so that's why, for us, it's important. And for young people, when you can watch them, it's so empowering. It's so validating. And you don't always have to do anything. It's just listening, just asking a question and genuinely not offering a solution, not saying you should do this or you should, but just listening. It's empowering.
Well, I think we couldn't end on a better note. Looks like we titled our fire chat pretty appropriate. And I just want to, I'm so thankful for you both for the work you're doing and for sharing a little bit and bringing some of those voices into the conversation today. So let's give up. Thank you. So I'm just going to, if you don't mind, read some acknowledgments. There are a lot of people who made this day come together, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss someone or some group, but I just wanted to do those acknowledgments, share those, and then through those doors waits reception for us, and we can take the conversation outside. So first of all, just I think I have a long enough list here, so why don't you hold your applause, but for all the demoers from the open house, just the energy there. The only complaint I heard was, it was too loud. And I'm like, well, but that's just a sign of the level of engagement. A shout out to the Cortico product and engineering team. All of the amazing work and the advanced features coming out, but much of what, every time we heard about the partnership team and all of our partners, what stands behind that is this extraordinary team that is building the platform that I hope you got a sense of today. To Dimitra for organizing the 6 workshops and also dealing with some last-minute chaos and some last-minute changes, and I think it all went so smoothly. The workshop coordinators and the conversation seeders, thank you for kicking off. I know the 2 conversations I was part of were amazing, and I'm waiting to hear the sense-making output from the whole collection. Our fireside chatters, including, of course, Robert and Kathy, the OIN fellows for coming in and just run. I can't wait to hear about how that workshop went this afternoon. To Laird and Studio 125, we are a complicated group when it comes to AV, and we have made it through this day smoothly. To Artemisia, all the design, if you look around the C3 on your tables and the signage and everything, that is the invisible or kind of visible hand of Artemisia. Cassie for designing and bringing a new form factor of Analogia. I hope many of you got a chance to play around at lunch. To Maya and Wanjun for open house planning. Matthew, who ran countless errands to make this all work. Lori for copy editing and hotel management. Ellen for writing copy and a lot of the communication that brought us all together. Candido and the Media Lab facilities for helping move furniture. We had a pretty complex series of moves. For the pre-event conversations, and I hope you got a sense of what we're trying to do and kind of bringing voices actually of ourselves in a reflective way through these medleys starting in the morning and in the workshops. V for introducing the conversation prompt and co-design process that led to this. Hannah for organizing and messaging conversations. People across partnerships team at Cortico for facilitating those conversations. Elena P. For making the medleys and setting one to music and all that brought all of our voices together. And finally, to Heather and Leela and Kate, who have been working around the clock. When I last heard, over the weekend, updates on Saturday and Sunday, coming in Monday at 6 a.m. for a delivery that arrived at 9 a.m. and with incredible grace, just making this entire day just flow. Thank you to everyone. Heather, did I miss anyone? Because if anyone would know, no, wow. Usually I get pulled aside as soon as I walk out the door, and it's not a good thing when that happens. So I thought I'd just check for sure. So with that, we have wine and drinks and food waiting for us. It's been a long day, but I hope you will unwind with us now. We have the space till 8 p.m. 8:30. Great. And so we hope you will decompress with us and just love to hear and continue the conversation. So with that, that is the last segment of our second annual symposium. Thank you.